record on my computer here, and I'm going to go and share my screen, and we will jump in and get started to today's webinar. I want to make sure that I open up the chat area in case any questions come through as we are going through our webinar today. Well, welcome everyone officially. It's 5 o'clock Eastern time here, and I'm excited to host this new webinar for you all on student and teacher feedback with Book Reader. Welcome, welcome, and a couple of things if you are new to joining us here on Zoom for these webinars. I think this is number 8 for me for Wednesday webinars with Book Reader. And really excited for this topic. And if you haven't already found the chat area, that's going to be a great place for you to share today. You can use that drop down if you want to where it says all panelists and attendees, if you want to place something in the chat for everyone to see as it goes along with some of the questions I will pose to you over the course of our time together. So thank you all for joining in on this webinar. We are going to talk about all things Book Reader with a student and teacher feedback lens. Now, if we haven't met before, my name is Monica Burns. I'm a former New York City public school teacher, and I've been out of the classroom for the past few years, hosting professional development, doing all sorts of virtual and on-site professional development for educators, and spending lots of time in classrooms the past few years working side by side with teachers and students. So I'm a Book Reader ambassador, an ed tech and curriculum consultant, and founder of ClassTechTips.com. And if you are on Instagram, you're welcome to follow along with myself and with Book Reader. I know I've been doing a little bit of a TikTok challenge this week and trying to post some TikTok videos there too. But if you are on social, you can find me at Class Tech Tips and find Book Reader in all of those places. And so welcome everyone. Welcome back, Sheila, who was with me for a webinar yesterday. I'm really excited to have you all here. And so today we're going to talk about a quick overview of Book Reader. We're going to go through some ideas that you'll want to take into consideration for setting up students for success, especially during remote learning. We'll go through some best practices for giving feedback, both teacher feedback and student feedback, as well as some workflow tips. And of course, we'll save some time at the very end of today for Q&A, but I've got that chat box open. We are a nice size group. John is here on the call from Book Reader, so please don't feel like you have to save your questions to the last few minutes. You have that Zoom webinar chat area and the Q&A spot. You can use either one if you want to pose questions, and either John will answer it for you in the chat, or I'll jump in and give some feedback, or there might be someone else on the line on the webinar today who has something to share with you too. So I'd love to hear from you. If you can find that chat area, some of you shared where you are from. How familiar are you with Book Reader? How familiar are you with Book Reader? Are you someone who's totally new? You stumbled across this webinar and said, ooh, I want to make ebooks with my kids. Have you used Book Reader a couple times? What is your, how familiar are you with Book Reader? So I hear from some folks it's completely new, just started using it in e-learning, have an account but haven't used it before, just started exploring Book Reader. So I'm excited that there's folks with lots of different levels of experience. And one thing I want to make sure you know is that I am recording this webinar, and the folks at Book Reader do such a great job of sharing webinar recordings on their YouTube channel. So if at any point today I'm moving through things a little quickly, if you are brand new to it, please know that I'll send out the link to the recording to you. And then I will also suggest that you check out Book Reader's YouTube channel and other upcoming webinars that focus on getting started with it. But if you are very new, and I know a few of you mentioned that before, mentioned that now in the chat that you're pretty new to it, don't worry. I know that you're going to leave here with just a great set of ideas for you to try out, whether you're totally new to it or you've been using it in other ways before. So a few things that I want to make sure you know is that there are specific remote learning resources from Book Creator that you may want to explore. So they have an ebook resource with activities that are great for families. The collaboration that is built into Book Creator is a paid feature, but now you can get a 90-day free trial of it. There's webinars like this one, plenty in the archive from earlier this spring, as well as more up on the calendar. And there's a specific workflow I'm going to suggest as it relates to remote learning. So just something to keep in mind as we go through today. Now, a quick overview of Book Creator. It is an open-ended creation tool for iOS and the web, including Chromebooks. So today I am on my MacBook. I'm going to take you out to the Chrome web browser to show you everything that I'm going to do inside of Book Creator, but you could use it on a different device as long as you're connected to the web. And if you have an iPad, you could use it on iPad. Although I do want you to know that some of the features I'm going to share with you today and some of the workflow I'm going to share with you today is really about being on the web. So you can kind of think of it as two different things. I know that's what John often suggests for folks to kind of differentiate between the two. Now, students and teachers can create and publish books with Book Creator. It's super simple to make interactive pages with voice, text, video, images, and more. You will see a big combination of that with me today. And students of all ages can use Book Creator. I can tell you from my own experience that I've been side by side with elementary school teachers and students using Book Creator, using a feedback loop like the one we're going to talk to today. But this is something you can use all the way up to high school students. And there's lots of resources that the folks at Book Creator have pulled together to help you get an idea of what you can do at all different grade levels and all different subject areas. And so today you'll see me go through how you can create libraries for students. This is going to be the most important part really of our feedback, because you need to be able to get and see their stuff in order to give them feedback. So we're going to go through that today. And when you're thinking about all the things you can do in Book Creator, remember it's open-ended. And when something is open-ended, I think of it as a blank canvas, kind of like a choose your own adventure. You can do so much right inside of Book Creator. So today is not focused on one subject or one kind of grade level or anything like that. We're talking broadly about ideas for teacher feedback and student feedback. But of course, you can use Book Creator to create digital portfolios, science reports, poetry books, learning journals, step-by-step guides, comics, you name it. There is so much that you can do with Book Creator. Now, outside of the classroom, as opposed to inside of the classroom, there are a couple things you want to consider. So if you are currently in remote learning, if you are anticipating doing some summer learning that is out of the classroom, if you are planning for the potential of having students inside and maybe outside of the classroom in the fall, depending on where you are and the time of year, there's a couple things you'll want to take in mind that's really important for our feedback loop. So setting up a teacher account first and foremost is what you want to do. You'll see me go through the login process today. You'll also want to share a login protocol with families. This is so that they know where they go, what they press on, how they get their kids into the library. And then of course, you're going to want to check in on student books, even if they're not sitting side by side. And that's going to be a key focus of this idea of giving feedback that we're going to talk about today. Now, a note about access and priorities that I think is really important to mention, and I'm sure for you is pretty front of mind when it comes to thinking about how to make all of this happen in a distance learning environment. You'll want to position this resource, right, in a way that's right for your group. So if you know that you are giving more suggestions and sharing ideas with families as opposed to setting set expectations for them, those are all things to keep in mind as you are sharing this with families. You want to make sure they are supported and that they have what they need. And so we're going to talk today about creating a library, inviting kids into a library, and then giving them feedback on what it is that they create. So you might want to play along with me today. I know sometimes when I watch a webinar, I'm emptying the dishwasher or I'm folding laundry or something like that. So I'm kind of doing double duty. But if you are right here in focus with us, I would love for you to try out Book Creator on your device, maybe signing in for the first time, or to log back into your account. Now, if you are signing in for the first time, you'll notice on my screen right there in the center, there's the student sign in button at the top, and then the teacher sign in. You'll want to toggle over to teacher sign in. I use Google single sign on, but you could sign in with Office 365, with email, or even with Clever. And once you're signed in, you have your library, you create a library, and then you open up that library, and where you see the little blue words, invite code, you get a code and you invite kids in. Once kids are in your library, you will be able to give them feedback. So that's part of the workflow of getting everyone set up and ready to go. So I want you to watch me as I set up a new library. This is a really important step for getting kids all in the same place before you give them feedback on whatever it is that they are creating. So again, you are welcome to head over to app.bookcreator.com. If you get there, you'll notice that students is first. You're going to want to toggle over to the teacher piece. And John and I are on the same wavelength today as you see that come through the chat piece. Perfect timing, right? So you're going to go from student to teacher and you will sign in. Once you're inside, this is my window where I'm already logged in. You will see the dashboard here with libraries and more resources. So here in the library, you'll see all sorts of libraries if you've made them before, or you'll be prompted to create a new library. So for us today, we're talking about feedback. So I'm just going to make a library for us today so you see the process. When I want kids to jump into a library, I'm going to allow them to have Google image search. I'm going to let them edit their own books. And I probably want to let them read each other's books, right? If we're doing student feedback, so you can decide whether or not to turn that on. And if you want kids to leave feedback, so today I'll show you how to leave audio feedback, text feedback, even emoji feedback, right? Then you do want kids to be able to collaborate because you're going to want them to open up the page of a friend's book and put a little sticker, whether it's an audio sticker, a text note, or something like that. So if you're not quite ready for the student feedback piece today, you might decide to turn off collaboration, and you might decide to turn off students reading each other books. These are going to be some decisions that you'll want to make. You know what your expectations are and what you want students to do. So I'm going to go to create a library. And here's my feedback library. Now, I'm going to invite you into the library today. If you're interested in learning more about being in a collaborative space like that, we did a webinar earlier this spring all about collaboration, and we kind of went through a workflow like that live. But I just want to show you what you would do for kids here when it comes to setting them up. So when your kids go to log in, they go to student sign in. They sign in with Google Office 365 or a QR code, and then they will be prompted after they sign in to put in a code. This is where you would get the code for them. So they would put in this code and they would join your library. Then when kids are in the library, they will create something and you will leave feedback on whatever it is that they created. So if you haven't already, I'm going to encourage you to sign in or create a new account. This way you can practice some of the things we're going to talk about today when it comes to leaving feedback. That way you get a feel for what you can do and what you can add to a page. So go for it. If you haven't gone there already, you're going to want to go to app.bookcreator.com and sign in on the teacher toggle. So click on the teacher screen and you'll want to sign in and create a library just like I did. So you're welcome to keep playing around to go through that process if you want to. And now I'm going to take you through some feedback strategies before we go back out into a live demo and try that out. And yeah, Bethany, you can totally do this with a free account. I saw that question come in. So you'll be all good to go for today. So let's go ahead and talk a little bit about feedback. Whenever we're giving feedback, we want it to be timely, relevant, actionable, and inviting. Now, I have a book called #Formative Tech. So all about formative assessment with digital tools, where I talk a lot about feedback. I talk about it in my Tasks Before Apps book too, but that one's all about formative assessment. And the idea here is that we want to make sure that feedback is timely. So it comes in a timely manner so kids can see it and it is relevant to them, right? So it comes, it's in the moment. We know that it's going to be something that they are going to be able to use, and then it's relevant to them because it's something they can use right away and it's connected to what their goals are. And then, of course, that feedback needs to be actionable so that they can do something with that feedback. And of course, we want it to be inviting as well. So we want them to know that we are here supporting them, and we want that in feedback to be inviting. So timely, showing up in a timely manner. So if you ask for students to finish something, you have a quick turnaround time for giving them feedback. We want the feedback to be relevant so that it makes sense and has to do with what it is that they're trying to accomplish. Actionable, so they know once they see your feedback what they have to do. And then inviting, so that they know it's coming from a place where you are supportive and excited about what they've accomplished so far. So you can think today about feedback in a few different ways. And if you've used digital tools to give feedback before, you probably have some experience giving feedback in multimedia, so in different types of media. You can give feedback in text, so typing a note. You can give feedback in audio, recording your voice. Feedback in video, so they can see and hear you. Feedback with an emoji, and feedback with annotation, so circling something, drawing something, or pointing to something. So text, audio, video, emoji, and annotation are 5 kinds of feedback that we're going to look at today. And some of these we're going to dive into with a little bit more nuance as well. So I'd love to show you an example and take you through an example, and then we'll go out and you'll actually see me press on all the buttons and add this type of media to the page. So let's take a look at this example and imagine that a student has put this in their book. Maybe they have created a reading journal. You are looking at their page and you are going to give them feedback. So imagine they have this layout so far. They've been reading a book and they wrote May 10th, 2020. Today I read a new book and I absolutely loved it. The book was really funny and I want to tell all my friends about it. They've got a picture of the blue background and a picture of the beach. So let's talk a little bit about how we can add to this page. I'm going to show you what it looks like to add all the different kinds of feedback. And you might think that, Monica, doesn't that seem like a lot of feedback to give, right? Well, I want you to think about what makes most sense for your group of kids. You probably wouldn't do all of these things, right? But I'm going to tell you a little bit about some of the value add that you might want to consider, and then we'll go out and we'll try and add some of these to our page. So the first thing to consider is text, right? So we said text is one type of feedback you could give. When you are giving text feedback, so typing a note to that student, you want to take a couple things into consideration. Is your font friendly and inviting? Are the colors you're using going to pop out so kids notice your feedback on the page? Have you sized it in a way that makes it obvious that you have added this into the page? Have you positioned it in a spot that makes sense? So if your feedback is about one thing, is it near that other thing on the page? And have you shown kids how to remove that feedback if you've added it to the page? So that is one way to take a look at it. So if you have that student piece that they've created, you can add text to the page. So I'm just going to come back out here to my library here. Let me see here. I'm going to jump into this reading journal example. We'll pop it up here and take you out to this page. So if I was going to give text feedback, this is what I would do. I would go to the plus sign, I would click on text, and I would type my feedback to students here. Now, we're talking text today, but I could also use voice to text and use my voice and put that into text. So either one's an option. So if I was going to give feedback here, I might give some feedback about the picture students chose. If I know that their book wasn't really a tropical picture, maybe this was just a picture of something they liked, I might encourage them to think about the setting of the book. So I might write something like, I would love for you to revisit the setting of this book. Where does it take place? Can you find a picture that matches the setting? So I could place this right here. And now once I've got that, I can hit done. And if I just leave it like that, it's kind of a mess, right? So I want to move it somewhere and place it somewhere that it's going to be obvious for students so that they can look at the feedback. So I'm going to go here to the inspector button. I can go ahead and, you know what, this font is pretty friendly, so I'm not super worried about it, but maybe I'll choose a color for this if I wanted to, or a background, so it kind of makes a box for it, and then place it right here so they can tell that this is my feedback that I've left right there on the page. So the idea here is that I have my whole library. I can see a student's book right here. I can click to open it up. I can start reading their book, and I can leave feedback. When the student goes back to this page, you also want them to understand how to remove the feedback. So they can see what you said, they could go and change up their picture, and then when the feedback is finished, they can just click the delete button and it will go away. If we didn't want to delete it, I just did an undo there. I could go to inspector and I could also delete it from here. So two ways, either hitting delete on your keyboard or getting rid of it that way. So as we talk about this idea of text, you want to make sure that the font is clear, the colors are friendly and inviting, the size makes sense, the position makes sense, and that kids know how to remove their feedback after you've taken action on it. You can also add audio feedback to a page. I was working with a group of fourth graders just this school year, and their teacher and I were talking about this. And so the kids were in the classroom, and we were talking about feedback loops and formative assessment, and the kids were doing these awesome books. And her and I went to the other side of the room. We opened up one of the students' books, and we left an audio message on his page. And on the other side of the room, he heard our feedback by pressing the button. So audio feedback is really powerful. And what you might consider here is that if I had typed out that message about the setting, it may have been something where it could have been easier for me to record my voice. I know that the kids would be more receptive if they heard my voice and the tone and how inviting I was about it, as opposed to maybe something that they might think might have been judgmental or maybe a little harsh, right? So you can decide on that. And then you can also change the size, the position, and show kids how to remove it. So let's go out here and practice this. I'm going to go to the plus sign, record, and I'm going to start recording. I love what you've shared so far. Can you tell me a little bit more about your setting? Because I'm worried that the picture might not match the setting of the book, and I want to make sure you get it just right. So once I have my recording, it'll pop up with a little audio button. And if I want this to be super duper obvious, I can make it really big for kids, right? I can just put it right here on the page. And then when they open up, they'll be like, oh, look, there's some feedback from Miss Burns. And they can click on it. And of course, when they are done making their changes, they can hit delete and get rid of it. So the audio feedback is great because they can hear from you. If you are in a distance learning experience, right, where kids are not side by side with you, I definitely encourage you to use your voice with the audio piece if that feels good for you, because I know that students will really appreciate, right, hearing your voice in times like that. Also, as we go through and we talk about these pieces, you might decide to use video. So with video, you are then recording your video on the page, giving feedback so kids can see you and they can hear you. So this is also great for your voice and your tone. You can position the video anywhere you want and remove it by deleting it. So let's go ahead and try that. So I'm going to go to plus sign, camera, record video, and here I am in double screen, perhaps, depending on how you're viewing this. And okay, I want you to take a look at the picture and blah, blah, blah about the setting, right? You get the gist now of my message here. And I can go ahead and write use video, right? Or I could have it downloaded, saved for later to import it later. And once I've got that video, it'll pop up here on my page just like the audio component, and then I can move it around so that it goes in the right spot for me, and so kids will be able to see it. And I'll give that a moment to upload, but it just takes a moment there. Now, I'd love for you to try it if you haven't already. If you can open up a page of your own book and try adding text, audio, or video to your page. We'll take a couple moments for you to try that out. I'll take a peek at the chat area and take some time to try out that text, audio, and video piece. Great. So I see questions came in about collaboration, right? So you can use that 90-day free trial for collaboration. And so that's something you'll be able to access as soon as you kind of say yes and sign up with that piece. And yep, everything you see me doing today, you can do with the free account. So if you haven't already, go ahead and open up that page and leave a comment. I want to talk to you about some other options though, so you're welcome to keep plugging along and playing along on your page as I go through a few more. So in addition to text and audio and video, you might add some emojis to the page for students. Now, this could go alongside a text, a video, or audio as an additional piece, or you might want to do it as a way to think about annotation, which we'll talk about in a moment too. So if I come back out here, there's my video, right, that I just recorded. So I could put that there as a message for the kids, but I'm gonna delete it for now. I can go up to the plus sign, pen tool, and here's where all my emojis are. So I might add an emoji to the page, right? There's plenty of these here to choose from. So I might decide that I want to add a smiley face because I'm really excited about what a student has done before. I might decide that I want to add something like the pointer finger because I want to talk about the picture that they chose. So I can go ahead and add these to the page. And once they're here, I can move them around. I can point to different things. And of course, if I want to get rid of it, right, I can hit delete. So we'll go ahead and delete that piece. Perfect. So with emojis, you can have some sort of consistency, so constant ones that you pick and choose from. And that way kids know, oh, when she leaves this on the page, she means this, or we use this emoji to indicate something about the setting or a character, and they might have seen you use some of these before. So totally up to you how you would bring that in, those norms into your classroom, how you might resize them, and how you would show students to remove them when you're done. Now you can also put annotations on the page. So with an annotation, you are drawing or circling or pointing towards something. So you can choose different colors. You can decide how much you want to use annotations here, and then of course show students how to remove them. So I'm going to exit out of here and show you what this looks like. So I'll go to the plus sign, the pen tool, same way I got to my emojis before, but now I can go ahead and choose a pen so I can decide on which one of these I want. Maybe we'll do that one. Maybe I'll choose some sparkles, and then I can go ahead and draw on the screen. I can put an arrow if I want to and hit done. And then it'll pop up like this, and I can even move it around if I wanted to. And after students see your note, they can go ahead and delete it after they have made their changes. So just by clicking on it, of course, and hitting that delete button. So up to you on how that would look. Now, if you haven't and have thought about your own feedback loops yet, I love to hear a little bit from you. So you're welcome to try out the 3 that we talked about, text, audio, or video first, or try the next 2 on the list, emojis and annotations. But I'd also love to hear from you a bit as we start thinking a little bit more about feedback strategies. What does feedback look like in your classroom right now? You can use the chat bar, right, the chat option to let us know what does feedback look like in your classroom or with the students you support or the teachers that you work with. What does feedback look like right now? See, Debbie said she loves the video feedback. Awesome. Any other feedback stories you want to share about what feedback looks like in your classroom, you can go ahead and add that here in the Zoom chat. So I see writing in the chat feature of Zoom and Google. Awesome. Typing to praise effort, using audio, right? I totally agree with that, John. It saves lots of time and energy and typos. I know that sometimes people reach out to me with a question on Instagram and I just respond with an audio message, which I think is fun, but also saves me a lot of time for just giving a quick audio message. So great, doing comments in Google Docs and slides. Yeah, motivating students to provide video feedback to each other. Yeah, we're going to talk about student feedback in a moment. Yeah, so much. And I appreciate all of you sharing some of these in the chat area. And of course, you can do the all panelists, but if you want everyone to see, you can do the drop down all panelists and attendees. And then everyone else joining today can see what you've done too. So let's talk about a few other features that might be useful when looking at feedback. And this is something that may be new to you, especially those of you who said you are very new to Book Creator or have only used it a little bit, which is the transcripts. So this is something that is wonderful and a newer feature inside of Book Creator that can really help with feedback. So leaving audio feedback might be nice and easy, right? The way John mentioned it and the way I said I do a lot of audio messages, but giving students transcript can help make it accessible for everyone in your classroom. So how does this work? Well, remember how I recorded my voice before and left a little audio button? I can then click on it, hit the inspector button and say add audio transcript. I tell them I was speaking in English, US English. I can do generate automatically. It'll generate the transcript for me. And then when I've generated a transcript, you'll see the little icon right down there next to the play button. So if I click on it, I can then have the option there to see the transcript. So let's try this out together live here. So I'm going to go back to the audio feedback from before, plus sign. I'm going to go all the way down to record, and I'm going to start recording. I love what you've done with your response or your reading. Can you tell me a bit more about your setting? I want to make sure the picture matches the setting of your book. So that was kind of what I gave as feedback before. Let's go ahead and use this recording. It'll put the audio on my page. And if I want the transcript for students, I can just make sure, I don't want this to be blue, right? Or I don't want this to be blue. I want this to have the blue around it. Then I go to inspector and it says add transcript. So I was speaking in English, US, I'm here in New York, right? So I'm gonna go to generate automatically, and it's going to generate the transcript for me. So just like you saw on the icon on the screenshot from the page I shared with you as part of my keynote presentation there, this is going to allow you to generate the transcript. It'll do it right there for you. And then you'll see once it's done that you can edit it. So let me double check. I love what you've done with your response on your reading. Can you tell me a bit more about your setting? I want to make sure the picture matches the setting of your book. Awesome. I could also replay it here if I wanted to, if I forgot what I said, and I can download it if I wanted to save it for later too. So I can hit done, and now I've got the little transcript. So if a student is going to look at this and maybe they're in a place where they're not supposed to be too noisy or they're not playing things, they can click on the transcript and they'll see what is right there. So it can be a really powerful way to support your students by having that as an option. I love that that's a new feature, and it could definitely come in handy as you talk about feedback too. If you've used the transcript feature before, I'd love to hear about it in the chat. If you have questions about the transcript feature, it's a great time to ask them. Or if you have a specific use case about doing that transcript feature for giving feedback, I'd love to hear it. So feel free to jump into the chat and share that too. So you saw me as I created a transcript with the audio and the video component here, but I want to make sure with all the things we've looked at so far that we have some context of what it would look like to use all of the feedback that we want to give with students in both the teacher to student feedback as well as student to student feedback routines. So with teacher feedback, some of the pieces that we've looked at today and really help you with your efficiency. You heard me mention, John put it in the chat as well, that the idea of doing audio or voice to text to leave feedback can really help you be efficient in terms of reaching all of your students and giving feedback that is timely, which is so important. When it comes to teacher feedback, you also want to make sure that you have a workflow that is just right for you. So you saw when I was in my library here, this library, I would give the invite code to students, then I would see whatever it is that they created. I could go through all the books. These two are just mine, right? But I could go through everyone's books, and I would have to decide on what workflow is going to be best for my group. So maybe just the same way that when I first started teaching, I would collect everyone's composition notebooks before they went to lunch, and I would tell them to fold down the page or put their pencil in as a bookmark or whatever our routine might have been. And then when they went to lunch, I would look through all of their composition notebooks, their their marble notebooks and take a look and maybe jot something down or put a post-it note on the page or stickers or something, right? That was my workflow. But here, right, you would have to decide what your workflow would be. Maybe you tell students to put a shape or a star on a page where they want feedback, and then you decide to jump in there and give feedback just in those spaces. Or maybe you always do audio feedback so your kids know what to expect from you and you have a workflow that you are comfortable with. So as you are exploring these pieces, you'll decide yourself or maybe play around with both first before you make a decision on whether voice, video, right, that type of feedback is best for you, or text, maybe using voice to text or just typing onto the screen is good for you too. Now, you probably want to consider the fact, right, that kids will appreciate hearing from you in different ways. So you might even ask students that you work with, what's the best way to give you feedback? Or how do you like to hear from me when I have something to share or a suggestion or a piece of helpful advice about your work? So you can decide what that would look like too. Now, another piece to keep in mind is that you'll want to make sure that you have set expectations for kids. So something like, I give you feedback on Tuesdays. I expect you to take action on your feedback by Thursdays or Fridays, right? So you would decide on what this looks like. If you are in an asynchronous learning environment, especially now when we talk about distance learning, if your kids are working without a set schedule, like it's not like they all have to be in front of their computer all day long, right? They can do their work at a time that's right for them. You still can set expectations that fit within that time frame. That way they know to be on the lookout for your feedback. If you are doing student feedback, so if you have kids that are sharing feedback with one another, there's a couple things you'll want to consider. So if we come back out here to Book Creator, right, and I go back to the settings of this library, I can decide that students can read each other's books. They have to be able to do this if they want to give each other feedback. And then I will want to enable collaboration. What this means then is that students can jump into each other's books and they will be able to give feedback. So if you enable collaboration, then you have the book here, then you can turn on collaborate for those books so that everyone in that library can edit it. So if you do that, then another student can open up the reading journal and they can leave feedback on their classmates' page. So you'll just want to decide what's the right fit for your group. If you are in a remote learning environment right now, it may be challenging to introduce those kind of digital citizenship skills for giving feedback to each other, but it is really up to you. So that is something that is really going to be essential for you to consider how you're going to introduce that for your kids. You'll also want to consider giving exemplars and non-exemplars. So exemplars meaning an example of something really great in terms of feedback, and then non-exemplar is something that's not so great in terms of feedback. I'll mention some of the free ebooks that are in the Book Creator library that you can take a look at. I did one for the folks at Book Creator all about digital citizenship activities, and there's an activity in there that's great for using with feedback too. If you are opening up student feedback in your classroom, you might also decide that you have feedback buddies. So Monica always comments on John's stuff, John always comments on Monica's stuff, and then if we do that, then we can go on and comment on another friend's things, right? So you would really just decide on what that looks like, and I encourage you to have students reflect on this process throughout it, so that way they can talk about their experience and what felt good for them. So before we get to our Q&A today, I want to share with you some extra resources. But before we get into those pieces of our formal Q&A and going through some additional resources, I'd love to hear from you a little bit more about this topic. So what type of projects might include feedback in this way? What is something you could imagine doing in your classroom with your students where they would be in Book Creator and then you would give them feedback the way we've talked about today? I hear book report as one example. I'll take a peek at the chat to see what else. A portfolio, essay writing. So lots of things that you can do here when it comes to giving feedback. So writing adaptations, wonderful. So feedback is important in all the things that we do, and you can bring it into everyday type of activities like a reading journal or something that's a larger project that your kids are working on. Same thing goes when it comes to one student giving feedback to another, right? So if they're publishing their own writing, that's right. I see another comment come in that they can peer edit, then you can edit, and then you can publish for the whole world to see. So before we jump into the Q&A, this is a great time to plug in some extra questions, and we'll share, the screen so John can jump back in here too in case there's questions that are more along the lines for him to answer. But before we jump into that Q&A piece, I want you to know that the folks at Book Creator have an awesome Facebook group. I'm in the Facebook group for Book Creator teachers. People share wonderful things and ideas all the time. So I definitely encourage you to jump into their Facebook. All you have to do is go to Facebook and type in Book Creator Teachers at the very top of your screen. Or if you're already in your teacher dashboard and you go to resources and you scroll down a little bit, you'll see the Facebook group right here too. There are also free ebooks, so you can find all sorts of ebooks with ideas that you can bring into your classroom. I mentioned the digital citizenship one, but there's a lot of them right here for you to take a look at as well. And this is a really great place to go to get some ideas. So there's lots and lots of them. And we know that peer feedback and teacher feedback works no matter what you're doing, right? So this is something that you can take into consideration too. So let's see what questions have come in and what I can answer for you, what we can answer for you. Anything, John, that you noticed that I didn't get to in the chat area?
A lot of questions about pricing, and I did send the pricing link in there. But basically, the free version, you get 40 books, one library. A couple of questions about what is a library, and a library can be anything. It can be a class, it can be a small group of students, it could be just a way for you to organize books. I mean, it really can be anything that you want. And then I also did put in a lot of articles, step-by-step guides for different things. So just in general, if you ever find yourself stuck and not sure what to do next, if you go to support.bookcreator.com, there are amazing articles in it that provide step-by-step directions with images and annotations and things like that. So I probably go there 100 times a day just to send people articles and information on how to do things, because those articles are way better than I can try to explain in an email. So I go there a bunch, and but there's a lot of really great stuff there. So I mean, you just go there and you're stuck on something with your camera. So you type in camera and you hit search, and it pulls up 10 articles about cameras, and things like that. So it's just really good, and I just highly recommend that you check that out. But other than that, I mean, just some basic questions, and I think we've answered most of those so far. But yeah, I'll stick around here for a minute or two like Monica, and we'll answer anything else that you have.
Great. Yeah. And that chat bar is right there for you to jump into. And so feel free to keep typing away if you have any questions. Do know that this is being recorded, as I mentioned earlier, so it'll be up on the Creator's YouTube channel. I encourage you to subscribe to their YouTube channel, because that gives you like a little mini notification if something new pops up, and they have playlist of resources, all great stuff on there. And there are more spring Book Creator webinars. Somehow we're in the second half of May already, John. I know we've been doing these since April, so that seems pretty wild, right? That we're all the way here in May. But I know I'm doing one more next Wednesday on journaling and portfolios in Book Creator. So really excited about that. We'll share some things for journaling with COVID-19 in mind, and having kids reflect and share feelings, and some things you might want to consider at that too. So all things to add to your calendar or put on your radar as well.
Yep. Bethany asked, is the collaboration enabled book by book, or is it, and I guess I should say, do students need to turn it in for us to give feedback? So this is a great question. And this is like, I blame this on Google Classroom. It's not Google Classroom's fault. But with Google Classroom, a kid does work. There's a nice little neat turn in button. They click turn in, and a teacher gets a notification that work has been done. In Book Creator, there is no such feature that does that. So when a student joins your library and makes a book, it is then the teacher's responsibility to click inside the book and view what has been done and leave feedback from inside the book. I use it during my graduate classes that I teach. And what I usually do is when when a student in my class says that they are done, underneath the book that they made, I have them mark it as done, the word done on the title of the book. And that way I can go in and I can read, leave feedback. And then when I'm done with it, I change the title to graded. That way the student can frequently go into the library and check things out. And then the other part of your question, Bethany, is collaboration enabled book by book. Yes, you have to turn it on book by book. The teacher, though, however, can always go into a student's book that's in that library, in the teacher's library, and go inside the book and leave feedback anytime they need to. And I think that was kind of it.
All right, great. Well, excited to connect with you all today on this webinar. As we said, make sure to stay tuned for the recording. We'll send that out to you, and we hope to see you next week as well. So thank you all so much. Have a great rest of your day, and hope to connect with all of you